Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to another special edition of the Strength Coach Podcast. We do this every month with Vince Gabriel, founder of Gabriel Fitness Performance and the Fitness Business University. He helps gym owners get more clients, make more money, and have more freedom. He's the author of 9 fitness-related books, including The Big Book of Marketing. He also does the KISS Marketing Business Secrets for Gym Owners segment, although I wouldn't know it because I haven't even gotten those segments this month yet, even though I bugged him like crazy, and then he repays me by sending me segments, and then he's like, well, I only have a certain amount of time because Anthony's really strict with the time, and that's why we call him overtime. Vince, thanks for doing this.
What's up, man? Sorry for being delinquent there on that one.
Well, it is the new year. I got to give you a little slack, and I know a lot of people are trying to get their stuff together, saying, hey, this is going to be my year. You just had a big mastermind. I think it was in California with your guys, your CEO guys. And everyone's probably trying to get in. Vince, how do I get more clients? How do I make my gym more profitable? So is that what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about today. And I was out I have 2 groups in the CEO Mastermind. Basically, we have 2 groups of 12 gym owners in there, and we meet 4 times a year. And it's a boardroom style, type of meeting where they prepare probably like a 20-page document every quarter, and the document has things about their team, has things about their financials. So they bring their profit and loss statement to it. They bring their biggest business challenges. They bring what their goals are. And so every quarter they're kind of redoing this, this packet. And the way the group is structured is each person gets in front of the room, basically presents their packet, and then, gets support from the group on their challenges and everything. And everyone reads their own. I have them bring 12 copies. So everyone reads the document before they go. So these people that are helping the other gym owners, they're getting a lot of inside track on the business and what they need help with. But the biggest thing, and it kind of is the right lead in for the topic today. But the biggest thing that they do is every quarter, right? They're doing this deep dive into their business, right? And one of the things that I have seen month after month, year after year in the people of this group, because some of the guys have been in this group for 4 years, a few of them that are in the group, right? Yeah. And what I'm seeing is these guys are becoming more profitable, meaning that they are making more money on the bottom line. And yes, a lot of them are growing revenue, but because we have their financials under a microscope every quarter, they're making more money, right? And the number one thing, and this isn't one of the 5 that I'm going to go over, but the number one thing that gyms need to become more profitable is this embracing reality, right? And I always talk about this as the numbers and your financials are the truth teller of your business. I have a gym owner that he always says to me, hey, how things going? And he comes back. I ask him how things going. And he says to me, he's like, I feel like things are going really well. And I'll repeat the question. It's like, well, I'm glad you're feeling good, but how's the business going? Right? Because it's like, you can't make decisions on how your business is doing based on emotions. Right? It's not about your feelings. Like, I don't care about your feelings. I care about how the business is doing. And the way you tell how the business is doing is through facts, through numbers. Right? And so there's 2 sets of numbers that are essential for every gym owner, business owner in general, to be tracking. And that's called your leading indicators, right? And your leading indicators are things that lead you down the path to have to make the money that you want. And your leading indicators are your leads, how many trials you sold, how many contracts, what your attrition is. All those need to be tracked on a weekly basis, right? And then those things lead to your lag indicators. And lag is not that it's not important. It's just, it's hard to change after the fact, but you do need to look at it, right? And that is your financials. That's your profit and loss statement. Right. So I looked last week, my eyes are freaking still glazed over. I had 23 hot seats that I did where I'm reading a 20-page document of profit and loss financials. And I'm like, oh man, I was like, how did I get here? Like I used to tell people to do Bulgarian squid squats, and now I'm reading 23 profit and loss statements, from there. And I was like, took it, but I love it. Like I really enjoy it because it is the way that you can really, really help people. I used to be part of a mastermind, and they would get up there and be like, oh, and they would write a bunch of random stuff on the board and like, oh, I think I need help with this. And I think I need help with that. And it's just like, it was just working in circles. Like no one actually really got to what they needed to get because there was no data to show what they needed to get. Right. Whereas this group, there's data behind it. Right.
Yeah.
And it's very, very helpful, but at the same time for gym owners, it's very, very frightening, right? The line I always have, I could show you a string of text messages that are grown gym owners telling me that they're having trouble sleeping the night before the first meeting because they got to get up in front of the room and show their financials in front of the group. And literally one of our newest members, he's a fighter. And he's like, I'm more scared to go in front of the CEO mastermind than I am to go in a fight. And I was like, I didn't understand. Like, I'd much rather show my numbers, even if they're bad, than getting punched in the face by some other guy. That's just me. I'm a big wimp. Right. Right. And so, but the whole thing about profit, right. And remember, there's this line, and I can't remember who said this. It might have been Bedros Koulian, I think. I've heard him say this, but is that revenue feeds the ego and then profit feeds the family. Ooh. And I was a very ego-driven gym owner in my early days. I was like, I wanted that $1 million gym and drive the revenue, and I was like, no, profit will take care of itself. And that's a very, very poor mindset. It's like you need to be focused on profit because that's the money that you actually get to keep. Right? You have no business in driving a ton of revenue. Even if you are going to sell your business someday, most of the time the business is sold on, what is something called EBITDA, which is essentially the profit, right? So even if you have a high revenue, but a really, really low profit, you're not going to be as happy because you're not going to make as much money from your business. So step number one in all that, this isn't step one yet, okay? But the base of all this is we must embrace reality through looking at the numbers, through looking at your leading indicators that go to your financials. You got to look at this. And here's the thing: what I'm saying ain't sexy, Ant. I'm not making any friends today with your listeners because some people have already turned this podcast off.
Yeah.
Right. There's other people that are like pushing stop. Like, I listen to this idiot babble about numbers. But I can't repeat and say this enough. It is the truth teller of your business. And Dan Sullivan has a line: all progress starts with the truth. So if we're going to make progress in our businesses, right, we have to embrace what actually is happening. And you can't do it based on your feelings or your emotions. You have to do it based on what actually is happening. So that's the first piece of it.
All right. Well, let's get into the 5 ways, the actual 5 ways. Now that we're bought in, Vince, the ones that stayed on, we know it's the numbers. Even though we're all still scared. And I wonder if the guys, if they had really good profit, are excited to go up that morning to say, Vince, look what I did. Instead of, oh boy, I really, I was charging it. I got all these expenses, and Vince is going to really lay the hammer down on me. So,
yeah. So no, and again, there's ebbs and flows. Like, some people came in. I mean, during COVID, it was brutal. Like, Right during COVID, I felt so bad for the guys. I was like, at one point, I was almost like, I don't even want them to see this. But it was just because it was so bad. But everyone knew it was because of that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, some guys get up there and they're like, man, they're like, yeah, this is like great quarter, and but yeah, so it really depends on what's going on. Okay, so number one thing, so the title of this podcast is five ways to be. I think it's to get exact 5 ways to become a more profitable gym before the end of the month. So basically, I'm gonna present on some of the things that we have taught in this mastermind that have seen a lot of these guys in this group go from really, really high revenues, low profit to high revenues, high profit, right? So these are 5 levers that people can pull. You're not going to be able to pull all 5 immediately. My advice is listen to this podcast, and maybe what is the one that spoke to you? What's the one that kind of pulled on you? That's a yes, I need to do that. I need to take advantage of that in my business right away. So don't try and do all 5 right away. Eventually, if you can do all 5, it's going to be helpful. But so the number one lever that gym owners can pull to increase their profitability of their business immediately before the end of this month is addressing their pricing strategy. And also known as how much money are you charging? So I had a call with a gym owner just this week, actually. Great gym owner, was doing a lot of things really well. I asked him about his retention rate, and his retention rate was right around 3%, right? Which is really good, right? Meaning if the example is if you got 100 members, 3% is you're losing 3 a month, right? It's a very, very acceptable retention rate. And if anything, I think these days it's actually an excellent retention rate. I'm seeing trending more to 4, some trending up to 5. If you get above 5, you're going to have a tougher time on marketing to kind of reload. But he was doing a great job. All right. And so, and then I was like, all right, cool. Great job there. And I was like, tell me about your marketing. And he's like, oh, we're spending, $3,000 a month on Facebook. He's spending $1,000 on Google. He was doing community events. He had a good flow of leads. And he had like almost 170 members. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, like, what the profits look like? And it's like, we're actually, I'm paying myself, but at the end of paying myself, we're not making any money. And so, all right, so here's a business. He's paying himself, a decent salary, nothing crazy. But at the end of it, he's got no profit. And I'm like, okay, one thing and one thing only, and that's price. He's keeping the people he's got. Okay. He's got lead flow coming in, right? His close rate was also really good. His close rate was excellent. So how is this happening? Right? Well, the people he's bringing in aren't paying enough money. Right. And that's as simple. It's just like, I was like, dude, you're doing everything right. Everything is great. It's just like, you're going to like be running this thing for a really long time and now make a lot of money. And he wasn't, and he got it. And so I gave him a couple options of what he could do. All right. I said, well, and he had these things like he was at one point, I think he was charging like $229. And I was like, hey, there's no difference between $229 and $249. Right. So like immediately there's $30 a month, right? And, per person. So we moved his current prices up, right, to the top ends of like, if it's a 2, we move it to a 5, right? If it's a 7, we move it to a 9. Right. So we just moved that. We changed his prices. And and I've talked to this before, and this is one of my favorite things to do. It's like, here's the how-to guide on raise your prices on new members going forward. You ready for this, Ant? All right, here you go. Take your notepad out. All right. Here's how to raise prices on new members going forward. Okay. You open Microsoft Word. You click the document that has your price sheet in there. You go into your price sheet. You edit, you delete one number, you add another number that's higher, then you click save, then you click print, and you reprint your price sheet with the new numbers on it. And then at the next sales appointment, you present the new prices. That's it. That's all you got to do. And
Wait,
I always got to laugh.
You said Reprint it. I missed
Yeah.
that, but no. Yeah.
Reprint it. And hey, if you want to laminate it, you can. Right?
Awesome.
There you go. There you go. If you want to laminate it, I suggest not laminating it because you should change them again. Right?
There you go. And you're cutting into your profits with the lamination. So.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. I didn't think of that, Anthony. Thank
And
you.
hey,
Anthony, thank you so much for contributing to the value and the content of this podcast.
Well, listen,
Yeah.
I will say too, you guys can go back a couple episodes, 347.5, and Vince talked about 5 ways to make more money at your gym without adding new clients. And this was one of them. So that was, and there are others, obviously. So, but yeah, definitely. I love that. That's a good strategy, Vince. You really laid it out very clearly there. But I took some good notes. So.
Attaboy. Right. So that's the first thing he could do. Right. I told him, I was like, okay, you can raise your prices of the new people coming forward. And most gym owners are usually okay with that. They're like, all right, they're not freaked out by that. Now the next one, people get freaked out by, right? And imagine that, like you actually raise prices on your current members. And like all of a sudden the air like gets sucked out of the room and everyone like, if people's faces turn white, it's like, I can't raise prices on my current members. That's they've been with me for 5 months. How could I ever raise prices on current, right? And at the end of the day, it's such an emotional decision. And I tell people to raise prices all the time. And for me, it's very easy because I'm not emotionally attached. It's just logical, right? And I had a full day of consulting with a gym owner from Chicago back in September. And he brought his financials and I looked at the financials and it's like, okay, we got to raise your prices. And he just turned white. He's like, I can't. These people have been like, I was like, no, you can. Okay. And if you're telling me your goals are to make more money because you got a baby on the way, right? Because he had a baby on the way. He wanted to make more money. And I was like, all right, well, this is how you do it. And he like was hemming and hawing. We talked for like 30 minutes back and forth about why you shouldn't do it. And then finally, I just was like, damn, it's your business to do whatever you want. And he ended up doing it. And he was like, oh, we're going to lose so many people. And he ended up losing no clients at all. He raised his prices. He ended up increasing his recurring revenue by like $5,000 a month or something like that. It was crazy. And there's zero loss, right? And it was an emotional decision. And there was people that came up to him and were like, yeah, it's about time you raise your prices.
Yes. Vince, that I was going to bring that up in a little while. I've had that in the past where people like, yeah, you got to raise, like my clients have said, you need to raise these prices, man. I've been paying the same rate for 5 years. And so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And for every like, and if someone like, and we have a whole guide that we created in SPF Mastermind on how to raise your prices. And Joe Hasher, who's the head business coach at FBU, he created it. And he's a brilliant business mind. And he raised his prices on members right after COVID and did it in a way where he had 800 members and didn't lose one person. But did it in a way that was like, oh man, this is like, it was a clinic. The way he structured it and the way he presented it to the members was like a clinic. And basically I said, I want you to take what you did and bottle that up and put it into a template so we can teach our guys. And he did that. And so that's what we do is we give guys that template and there's like a letter template in there and everything like that of what you should say in the letter, when you're going to raise your prices, why you're doing it. I had some dumb gym owner once say that he told me he told his members that he was raising their prices on them because of inflation. Ooh. And I about like just like lost my shit on this guy because he was just like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard, right? But you want to, if you're going to do it, you got to do it the right way, right? Now, even if you do it the right way, is there a possibility of you losing people? Absolutely. But what I've seen is that it almost always, I have yet to see it, but someone be like, I can't believe I raised my prices. I can't believe I made that decision. No one has said that to me yet. Most people have been very happy with the success and the results. And most people text me right after thanking me after they fought me on it, thanking me forever about doing it. Right. So But at the end of the day, it's an emotional decision, but it is price, right, is the fastest way to become profitable. And that is a lever to pull. And it is probably the most powerful lever that a gym could pull. Okay. Now, I do think that, hey, if you're going to raise prices on current members, that you probably shouldn't go from $200 to $400 a month. Right. I think that's kind of probably stupid and probably greedy. And, at the end of the day, you obviously can do whatever you want. But we've used strategies of breaking it down to where the per session, where you market almost like the per session rate. And some of our guys have raised prices and basically said, yeah, it's going to be another $1.79 a session.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, okay, are they going to complain about $1.79? Right.
Yeah.
Now to them, and the last thing I'll say on this is price raises should not be looked at in the short term. Meaning if I raise my prices, I'm going to increase my revenue by $3,000 a month. You should get that number. But way it should be looked at is if you increase your prices and you end up making an extra $3,000 a month of pure profit, right? Remember that. That's pure profit. So in their old model, this is if they wanted to make $3,000 in profit, if they were running at 30% yet, they would have to make $10,000. Do you understand that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Right. And so now here's how we can essentially make $10,000 in revenue in one move with zero increase in expenses. Usually, if you add $10,000 in revenue, you're going to have some increased expenses for that. This is zero increase of expenses because we're adjusting price.
Yeah.
So a $3,000 increase in profit is a $36,000 increase in profit over the years. Okay. And if you take 36 and you multiply it by 10 years, okay, that's $360,000 over a 10-year mark.
Yeah.
Now, if you take that 36,000 and you invest it in the market, as our good friend TJ Lopez would do, right, then that's a lot more.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to look at it on a long-term basis. I'm making this one decision today, and in 10 years down the road, that one decision will turn into this. And then when I present it to people like that, usually it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. I wanted to mention, I went to a conference years ago, over 20 years ago, in the different industry, in the coffee industry, actually. And they were talking about raising prices on coffee. And they said, this consultant was saying, and I thought this was brilliant. He said, listen, here's what you do. You're going to raise your price per coffee 5 cents this month. And then you got to make sure you're in line. The baristas are in, they know that you're raising the prices and you want feedback. So he goes, you're going to raise your prices 5 cents every month per cup of coffee until the baristas come back and say, all right, people are starting to complain or they're starting to notice. And I'm not saying that's deceiving, but he's right. Like you said, it was like a lot of people, it's okay. They're okay with those minor increases. And when you look at it like $1.79, but I thought it was brilliant. It was like, okay, when people start complaining, like I have, you raise your prices $200 a month, you're going to lose some people. You're going to get some complaints, some of the people, right? But when you do those little increments of, hey, we're raising our prices, they're 5 cents more, everybody, no one's complaining.
Yeah.
But when, when you get up to 25 cents a cup, maybe you're going to get some complaints, but I always liked the way he did that, and I thought it was a good.
Yeah, that is
lesson.
really good. And honestly, like it is like all of a sudden Starbucks, I used to get the coffee there and I would get like a I forget what like a grande, and it was like $2.50 or something, and now it's like almost $4.
Yeah.
It's like it's crazy. And it's just like, and
and they don't tell anybody. They're not hey, Vince, by the way, we're raising our prices.
Well, yeah, it's a little different in that you're not in a recurring, where I do like actually Panera, I think does this, where there's a coffee membership where they have a monthly price, which it's like a ridiculously low price, and you can get coffee like all month long.
Really?
Yeah. I forget how much it actually is, but well, here the point of it is, when do you ever just go in and get coffee? Right. If you go to Panera, right? You're getting coffee, and then you're going to get one of those scones, and you're going to get,
Remember a little sausage, egg, and cheese,
Yeah, exactly. So that's the whole point of it, from a Panera standpoint.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. So I think we beat that up pretty good, right?
We did. We beat it up really good.
All right. So number 2 is I have to give credit to one of the members for this one. I don't know if you know Devin Gage, but Devin Gage was our SPF Mastermind Member of the Year this past year, and he's a brilliant gym owner, someone I've worked with. I mean, I've worked with him for almost 10 years. I've worked with him before he even had, like a successful business. He was like doing in-home training when I started working with him. And now he's got, a 500 member gym. He opened up 2 satellite locations. I mean, it's killing it. And, I'm getting in the habit of taking all the great ideas that my clients have and stealing them. It's really nice. But he has something he does called the 4 R's, right? And basically the whole purpose behind this is creating daily habits around ringing the register, right? At the end of the day, the gym owner is responsible for ringing the register, right? And the gym owner is responsible for making sure that the right amount of money comes through the door. And when you can build daily habits into your business that ring the register, you're going to be more profitable because you're doing these things on a consistent basis. Okay. So Devin has this thing he calls the 4 R's. Okay. And that is he reaches out and tries to get one person that used to be a member to come in and be a member. So our first R is reactivation. Right. So it's a phone call to a past member. It says, hey, how you doing? And just does this once a day, one call a day. Do they always reactivate? No, probably not. Right. The second one is he does a client reach out. Right. And a client reach out is basically a reach out to a specific member, just checking it. How you doing, man? How things going? How your clients going? How's your sessions going? How's everything going, at home, and blah, blah, blah. So it's a client reach out. The third thing is a request for a referral. Okay. So he talks to a specific member and will ask for some kind of an introduction to a specific member. And the last one is a review, right? A review, which will drive Google review, that type of thing. Google review is probably the one I would do most, right? But the whole point of it is that there's activity being done on a daily basis that moves the needle for the business. Right. So we're getting referrals. And again, it's not to say that it happens every time. It's not to say that every phone call that he calls for a review, that they get a review. It's about the habit of doing this on a consistent basis. And this does not take a long time if you think about it. Right. But the purpose behind this is building, as the owner, building daily habits around your business that are going to help ring the register. And I think that enough people don't focus on this. They focus on, a lot of busy work and a lot of things but no, what is the work that actually is going to make an impact? What is the high value work that needs to be done in the business? And this is taking 4 things that are high value work, building a habit around it, right? And doing it consistently. And when you do this stuff consistently, and that's probably why Devin is just absolutely killing it right now, because he practices habits like this. So this is like a very tactical thing to do, right? It's a very tactical, whereas this pricing was a little more strategic. This is more of a tactical one for your listeners to go and say, hey, just do this, man. Just do this.
I really like it because a lot of times when we've heard some of these things before, but it's like, okay, I want you to reach out to all your old members, and you're thinking it's almost like the big to-do list. Like, oh, I got 30 old members and I got to call them all day. This is like one a day. I love it. It's like picking a member. Hey, reaching out, boom, picking one member to, instead of this, group email or, this whole, I love this, that it's like this really personal and specific action step. Great job.
So there's a quick story around this of there's a very famous copywriter named John Carlton who tells a similar story like this, and I call it ring the register, right? When you're doing things that are going to ring the register. And I'm hoping your listeners get this. Maybe the 20-year-olds don't know what a register is, but a register was these things that were behind the counter of shops and things like that, and they held the cash, right? And the ringing the register, when they would push a button, it would ring and then ring the register, right? Okay. But Carlton calls it Operation Money Suck. And he writes about it in his books. And basically, he tells this story of they were copywriters. So copywriters make money when they write words, right? And he tells the story about he's sitting down with this guy named Gary Halbert, who's another famous copywriter. And if anyone that understands marketing and knows marketing, they know who these two guys are. If you don't and you want to understand marketing, you need to know who these two guys are, Gary Halbert, John Carlton, right? And they're sitting down in the room and they're in the upper office and they're sitting down. They're about to write copy because that's the thing that brings in the money for these guys, right? So this is the 4 R's for these guys, writing words that sell. And all of a sudden there's a knock on the door and it's one of his assistants. Halbert had like 3 assistants, right? And the assistant knocks on the door and she's like yelling behind the door and she's like, there's something wrong with the copier and we have to get these proposals out. And if we don't get these proposals out, we're going to lose this contract and blah, blah, blah. And he opens the door and he shoos her out the door and closes the door and goes back in and writes copy. And then another knock on the door. The second receptionist comes in and she goes, the landlord's on his way up. He's pissed right now. There's something that you did in the parking lot that he's mad about. He wants to talk to you immediately. Okay. And he ushers her out the door as well. And the third receptionist comes up and basically says, you're behind on these bills right now. There's water heaters. They're like, and she's like song and dance. Same thing. Ushers her out the door. And Halbert sits down and he's like, all right, let's sit down and make some money. Right. And Carlton's like, what the hell's going on here? Like, it was like, it's a brilliant story, but it's like, he was focused. He was focused on all that other stuff can wait.
Yeah.
Right. But the money can't wait. Like we got to sit down and we got to do the work. So the point is you got to prioritize. If you're going to do the 4 R's like Devin Gage, you got to prioritize this stuff. Like you can't be screwing around on social media, right? And prioritizing jerking around on social media over your 4 R's, right? Over calling a client and asking for a referral, over calling a client, right? You have to like create what is the high value work that you need to do. And then you need to make sure that that work becomes more important than all the other work that you do. And when you can prioritize, so it's not just about doing it, it's about making sure you're doing it with energy and with gusto, and you're doing it in a way that's going to help you get results and not being distracted by all the minutia. Because there's like, I mean, they're putting out fires, right? There's a couple guys in CEOs that I'm spending, and some of them, and someone said that, and if he's listening to this, he'll know who I'm talking about, right? But he's like, I spend too much time putting out fires. Yeah, you do. You got to stop that. You have to stop putting out fires and just like let the fires, like just let it burn a little bit. All right, let it burn. It's not going to bring the house down. Go do the work that matters. Identify the work that matters. Go do the work that matters, and be okay letting other stuff go. So that's number 2.
Love it.
All right. Number 3 is your emphasis and focus on capacity. This is brilliant. So I had a gym owner in this past CEO group, and he was a new member of the group. So he wasn't yet indoctrinated into our world yet about running high profit. Okay. And he gets up there and he's got a goal to make 60K a month. I think he was at 30K. So that's my goal this year. 60K a month at 20% margins. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's, good, man. That's a 12K take home. He didn't say that. He just said 60K. All right. So this is like bookmark that thought, right? Bookmark that thought. And he's getting up there and I was like, okay, well, it's the plan to get to 60K. And he's like, I want to triple the amount of one-on-one clients I'm doing. And he wanted to go from like 30 one-on-one clients to like 70 or 80 one-on-one clients. And that number would get him to 60K right? And he said he would think in order to get to 60K, adding those one-on-one clients, he would run at about 20%. So again, $12,000 take home pay. And so I was like, okay. And just the thought of 70 one-on-one clients is exhausting to me, right? It's like I hear that and I'm just like, oh, I can't like that sounds like an awful thing to get that many clients, to manage that many trainers, doing that many sessions. It sounds like it's terrible. And so me being the profit seeker I am, I said, what else you got going on? And he's like, oh, we got this thing, semi-private training. And I was like, all right, tell me about that. It's like, well, we have 23 sessions per week of semi-private training where we have a potential to have 6 spots in each one. Okay. So imagine that on the calendar, 23. Okay. I believe, I don't remember what he was paying the trainer, but he was paying a trainer for 23 hours a week to run these sessions. And I think it came to I'm using raw numbers here just to kind of for that, because I don't remember the exact numbers. And I almost don't want to use the exact numbers just to disclose is identity, even though I'm not going to mention who it is. Right. But it was costing him in payroll, I don't know, like $2,500 a month to service these sessions. Okay. So he's making an investment in these 23 sessions a month for semi-private. I was like, how many guys you got in that program? He's like, 9. And I'm like, okay. So you are making an investment of $2,500 in payroll. And actually, the amount of money he was paying was almost exactly identical to the amount of money he was making. So he's breaking even on the deal. Okay, now that was never mentioned by him. But we want one-on-one, we're one-on-one, right? And I look at this as like, here's an investment of $2,500 a month that is at 1/4 capacity, meaning we're at 9 members. We could easily add 40 and generate that $12,000 a month that he wants with 0 increase in expenses. Or he could add 70 one-on-one clients or add 30, 40 more one-on-one clients and get to it in a much, much harder way. And the whole point of it is looking at your capacity and looking at what is going on in the business and where do you have room to grow and profit. And this guy had a ton of room to grow and profit based on where the situation was. And so now it's just like we just put a plan together. It's just like, hey, here's the plan, dude. All you got to do is get 30 more members to do your semi-private, and you can get to this $12,000 a month with 0 increase in expenses. And you'll probably get there a lot easier and a lot smoother, and you won't have as much payroll and you won't have as many headaches. It's just like, this is it. But he just wasn't looking at it. Right. And so there's simple moves that people can make in their capacity. Right. And really the first thing you need to do is look at it. Look at where you have capacity. Are you doing 4 people and could you do 6? Are you doing 3 people a session? Could you do 4? Right? Do you have 16 people in your large group and could you do 24 easily? Right. But the big thing people need to start doing to look at their business from a capacity standpoint and measuring that on a monthly basis. Measuring what was our capacity? What was the average number of people that came and showed up? If we have a slot, if we have 6 potential spots on an average, how many people came? Well, on average, it was 50%. Well, you have 50% more capacity that you potentially could add. There's a hotel. I can't remember which hotel this was, but the hotel has I forget what they called it. It was a very dark metric, but they would look at every night of the rooms they didn't rent, of the rooms they didn't sell. They would look at the amount of money that equated to, and they would basically say they lost that much money. And so, like, imagine you got a 100-room hotel that has 50 available rooms, and they multiply the room rate times 50. Like, that's how much money we lost Right. I mean, that's like
Jeez.
talk about like depression,
Yeah.
right? But honestly, and I'm not saying gym owners should do that, but if you do look at it on like what are you leaving on the table? If we can have six and on average we're at three, technically you're leaving on the table three spots every session, right? And so like if you want to be more profitable, you improve that, right? And we're talking about improving profitability, right? Because they profit if you improve the capacity, that it improves without increasing expenses. And that's really what profitability is how can you raise the amount of profit that you're making with not increasing expenses.
Yeah. Awesome.
So that's
It's
number
kind
three.
of funny that he wouldn't have looked at that like 9 people. I'd have been embarrassed to be like, yeah, I only got 9 people in there, Vincent. I'm trying to do one-on-one.
Yeah, because he identified with one-on-one. It was his thing. That was their specialty in bread and butter.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, even sometimes you got to do what is going to be best for the business and not what you like.
Yeah.
Okay, number four is I've talked about this before, but um, you need to have a very, very sound nurturing system to be more profitable, because I believe so much money is left on the table through people that have bad follow-up systems. And if you just improve the way that you did follow-up, you would become a much more profitable business. Number one is there's really two forms of follow-up. There's short-term follow-up and there's long-term follow-up. Both are important. Okay. Short-term follow-up is the most important thing about short-term follow-up is speed. And we have a lot of people that says, yeah, we were using the automations, and as soon as they opt in, there's automations that are going out and everything like that. And I'm like, okay, great, that's good. I was like, well, are you picking up the phone and calling people? And they're like, no. Like, well, there you go. Like, just if someone opts into your website, I don't think people understand the amount of urgency when someone opts in. I tell this story. I think I've told the story here before, but I have this story that I tell about I'm sitting on my front porch and my neighbor, he's like a real savvy finance guy. He's a CFO for a major company, and he solar panels on his roof. So I'm sitting out there one morning reading a book, drinking coffee, and I'm like looking on, let me see what this solar panel thing's all about. And I Google solar panels, and I opt in for like some special report for solar panels. And that day I was like interested, right? I wanted to talk to somebody about solar panels, and I wanted to see how much it was going to save me. And 3 days later, I get a call from a guy that said, hey, I heard you're interested in solar panels. I'd love to set up a time to chat with you. And that waved bye-bye 3 days ago. I was over it. I was on to the next thing. I didn't want to think about solar panels. I haven't wanted to think about solar. Now, there probably will be a time that I will want to open up that conversation, but that window closed. I'm talking to him that day, but it wasn't happening 3 days later. And so I think that people got to understand is that speed is key in follow-up. But the second thing is, and there's a study done in the data handling inquiry service that Dean Jackson always talks about. And it basically said that they did this poll of this massive data of people that opted in for things. And they basically came to the conclusion that out of 100 people that opt in for something, 50% will buy. Okay. But only 15% of the 50 that buy will buy in the first 100 days. Wow. So that leaves us 85% that buy in the next 100 weeks.
Wow.
Right. And so we should have systems to get that 15%, but we need better systems for the 85% because they're going to buy. We just don't know when. And they're going to go buy over a 100 month period.
Yeah.
So it's 100. So if you could just remember 100 days, 100 months, 15%, 100 days, right? Is it 100? Wait, 100 months. Yeah. I think
100
that's
weeks, probably, right?
100 weeks. Sorry, 100 weeks. Yeah, I was gonna say 100 must sounds like a long time. It's
Yeah.
100. It's 100 weeks, right? 100 weeks. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. I think that's what it is. 100 weeks. Yeah.
It's got to be. It's got to be. I mean, that's
Yeah. Well, you can have your people fact check that. You can have your people.
yes.
Yeah. Right. But that's it. So it's a really a profitable business is going to have really good follow-up systems, right? Short term and long term. Okay. And the last one is just clarity. I talked about in the very beginning of clarity on the numbers in general, but the last one is just very clear clarity on your expenses, right? And Mike Waldron, who owns Carmel Valley, who's the CFO for me and many of the top gym owners in America, he's literally like the ace in the hole for many of us in terms of monitoring money. He has us break down our expenses. There's three main categories for expenses, right? There's variable expenses, there's fixed expenses, and then there's payroll, right? And obviously your fixed expenses are things that don't change, right? That's your rent, that's your bills and all the things like that. Your variable expenses are, you going out to dinner and marketing and those types of things. And your payroll is what you pay out in your staff. And what you want to do is have clarity around one, what are those three numbers, right? But two, commit to some sort of a budget for those numbers, meaning that if you can say, all right, I know every month on average, roughly, I'm going to spend 20 grand in payroll. I'm going to spend 10 grand in variable costs, and I'm going to spend 20 grand in fixed costs. Like there's your expense structure. It's 50 grand, right? You know that you're going to, in order for this business to run well and provide a good service, you're spending 50 grand a month, right? And then there's clarity around that. And now your revenue, everything that exceeds that 50 grand, right, is what is designed as profit. So the last piece is just a very clear clarity on how much money that you're spending. And obviously, as you grow a lot, right, there will be increases in payroll and things like that. But if you're really clear on it, you're like, hey, how can I not increase payroll, but increase revenue? And that goes back to point number 3 in capacity, where it's like, all right, let's keep our payroll the same. Let's keep our payroll exactly the same. Right. But you got to have some clarity around that number. So those are kind of the 5. And I know I went longer on some than the other, but those are kind of the 5 levers to pull so guys can, build a more profitable business. Great that you got a lot of revenue, but at the end of the day, you want to have a more profitable business because that's the money you're going to be able to keep at the end of the day. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Love it. Awesome. Vince, one quick question on the nurturing system follow-ups. That includes kind of keeping your email list warm too, right? I mean, is that another piece of it for a lot of people that say, like, in terms of if they have some opt-ins or and I remember a long time ago you were talking about having, when you guys did a 30-day trial, you had a person specifically checking in, dedicated to those trial members, et cetera. Can you just, before you go, expand a little bit on what you mean by the nurturing as well?
Yeah. So, you're hitting the nail on the head with email. That is the best way to do it. I think we had a question in our group. And he said, I heard some email guru said that the sweet spot of emailing your list is once a week, which I think is a bunch of hogwash. And honestly, it really depends on the relationship with your list and everything like that. I do believe that if we're going to create a sweet spot, I would probably say the sweet spot's 3 times a week, right? In terms of, and obviously, providing valuable content and valuable, things that people can get value from, that they're not like, oh, this guy's trying to just sell me another challenge, right? So in terms of long-term follow-up, I believe you're 100% hit the nail on the head. 3 times a week email is like a good sweet spot for that. But then periodic phone calls, like maybe every, quarter you're getting on, and you're calling the people that opted in for something that say, hey, 3 months ago you opted in for this. We're just checking back with you and want to see how you do it. And that could be one of your, 4 R's that you do with Devin, right? That we talked about earlier. In terms of the follow up internally, it's probably getting them to drink the Kool-Aid, if you will, right? Getting them to be engaged in why should they stay at this gym, right? In combination with individual reach out, right? Hey, just want to check in with you and seeing how it's going. So it's like there's 2 forms. It's automation, and then there's manual follow-up, checking in with them with in a trial period with a clearly defined date to meet with them again to talk about membership. That's an important one. Some people will opt to sell a membership right away. I know a lot of people have gone away from the trials and just sold them memberships right away. I think it really matters on your strategy. I don't think that, I see success in both. So it's really what you're most comfortable with in selling. I think sometimes it's easier to sell a trial than it is to sell a full membership right away. But if you're a highly skilled salesperson, you can sell a full membership right away. Go have it. If you've got your trainer doing sales for you and they're not skilled at sales, maybe they need to sell them a trial and let the training do the talking. Like let the experience do the selling. So that's my answer to that.
Good stuff. All right, excellent. So there you have it. 5 ways to become a more profitable gym before the end of this month. Checking in on our big 5 here: addressing pricing strategy, the 4 R's, which I absolutely love, ringing the cash register, focus on capacity, having a nurturing system, follow-ups, and some clarity on expenses. So Vince, thanks so much for coming on and doing this again. And hopefully you're going to go back right now and send me some segments.
Maybe, if you ask nicely.
Keep them under 5 minutes too.
Yes. And then for those listening to this, because I think you'll be releasing this at a point in time, we are doing a full 2+ hour masterclass on marketing and sales. If they just go to vincesmasterclass.com, they can register for free. So if they like this podcast and they kind of want more, I'll be doing a live training on the weekends. I think it's January 28th and 29th. I think that's it. January 28th and 29th. Yep. Saturday, Sunday. vincesmasterclass.com. They register for free there.
All right, good stuff, Vince. We will talk to you next time.
Peace.